I'll chime in here with, I'm not sure thinking about this in terms of storage as a product is the most productive way. And I think some of the challenges that we face, is it a transmission resource, is it a generation resource, what exactly does it look like, is because we're actually thinking about it in terms of storage. Moving back to first principles, I'm a recovering engineer, so sometimes I suffer from this, and folks don't quite know what I'm talking about. But the first principle here would be, let's think about what the actual value or the product being delivered is. And the product that we get, the product we care about, there are two products in electric power. There's, from a consumer perspective, there's energy, and then there's capacity, the ability to turn the switch on. So I think it would be helpful for us, instead of having conversations about storage, it'd be helpful to think about it in terms of capacity resources. And if you do that, I think storage naturally falls to the generation side, because generation has capacity value. Now, we have difficulty. I'm not quite sure what engineers in the dark recesses of 15th and Welton for Excel and up there in Westminster for Tri-State figure out how to make it work. It's very clear on on the energy side, doing energy resource planning and using tools like Strategist and the like to make sure we have a cost-effective energy supply. It seems like capacity seems more of a black art from what I can tell, and it's difficult to get an accurate measure of the value of that capacity. And so we think about storage as a capacity resource, or one potential capacity resource, up there with bigger balancing areas for markets, or a compressed natural, or a natural gas fired power generator, simple cycle, or a combined cycle. It gets a little hairy, but I think if we can start working on tackling that and saying we got energy resources and we have capacity resources, then I think hopefully that helps us lead into a direction where we can answer some of these policy and regulatory issues. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but I'd like to have the conversation in terms of capacity resources as opposed to just storage.
Just one thing, I think that's a great discussion, and that's exactly how we're evaluating products with our members. What's the energy value, what's the capacity? The dilemma we have to that issue is that we don't have an organized market where we do have a decent capacity pricing. Simply aren't there. Most places in the United States are still struggling. Even the structured markets are struggling mightily to create capacity markets. So it is a daunting challenge, but it's one we're hoping to solve inside the family.
I just want to add, whether you call it capacity or use it for a host of other ancillary services, the issue we're looking at as the commission is just how to evaluate. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next resource plan that Public Service brings forward, there will be parties who bring forward the idea that we should try to figure out if there's ways to value technologies that heretofore have been called storage, and how can they fairly compete against what has traditionally been, a natural gas peaker or a combined cycle plant.
Ashok,
No, this issue, first of all, it is too early for us to comment on because we have not reached the stage of having storage capacity. But then I was just discussing with Matt that this dilemma is there in India also, whether treat them as a generation part or as a distribution part, because this dilemma is still debated in the CERC side. That's our regulatory circles.
right. Any questions?
I have one question to Mr. Reddy.
Yeah,
what
just
kind
one.
Hello.
What are the communication technologies you are implementing for WAN and LAN?
We actually have a study underway right now, which will be concluded by the middle of next year, to determine what type of communication technologies we want to implement. At the highest level, the question is, most communication systems today, you have a metering system, and that meter system goes back to a central location. You have a bulk bar system, a capacitor, a cap bank system, a whatever, and they all tend to hub back, so they bypass each other, all right? And then you bring them together. What we're still evaluating, but I think where we're looking at is as the edge becomes more dynamic, it becomes critical to have the information first at the edge. And if all you do is send the information back and then have to send it out, the latency is going to be too long. So we're right now heavily evaluating the strategy of moving our substations to be not just an electric asset, but a corporate asset, which also acts as our communication hubs. And then we would run the information through those substations. And even if we don't need it today, like voltage readings off of meters, for example, or things like this, that information is now available so that as the edge becomes more dynamic, the substations can then become much more responsive to the events that are taking place, so moving to a distributed environment. The other piece we're looking at is the interconnection of our substations into much more of a grid, almost a internet model, so that as we move into islanding, as we move into other types of models for the future, the substations themselves have redundancy and have the ability to communicate. Now, the principal challenge there is that the energy management systems and the other systems that are in place all are built around the centralized model, not a distributed model. So we're about a generation ahead of where the control systems are, but as we can start to build the communication systems into place and then pick our high-value substations, our transmission, what we call our critical cyber asset substations, we'll begin to bring those in. The other piece that we've seen is that the communications to our substations and to our equipment, we're getting more and more card access, video camera, different types of pieces, and there becomes, rather than having 4 or 5 or 6 different pieces, you want to begin to leverage that technology. So there's a number of forces that appear to be driving us in that direction of moving for our field infrastructure to leverage our substations as hubbing points, minimizing the amount of backhaul that's necessary, and then utilizing what we call endpoint encryption. So rather than just trying to build tunnels and maintain everything, we want to encrypt the information at the endpoint where it's generated so we can have a more open routing and still maintain security levels. And does that answer your question, sir?
Okay.
Talk more.
I think we will, in the interest of time, what we'll do is let's limit the 1 or 2 last questions to the Indian delegation because they won't have a chance to interact with this panel. We can definitely look at future interactions with people from outside within Colorado.
My question is to the panel. It is a general question. What kind of a interaction or the coordination or input you are getting from the grid-wise, that is your smart grid forum in USA for implementation of the smart or development of a smart grid in various utilities?